Hi, everybody. As I was preparing for this sermon, a comedy routine came to my mind. One of the only comedians that I really follow or have ever watched is Tim Hawkins. Maybe you guys have heard of him, but he is definitely my favorite. And today, I wanted to preach about worship. And it made me think of the routine that he does called worship hands. So he tells the audience, he asks them, do you guys go to a hand-raising church? And some of them raise their hand if they do. And he says, well, if you don't, that's okay. I can kind of show you how it goes. So he says, when you go there, you can start with a elbow flap, just like this. Kind of get into it. Get your heart rate up a little. And when you're ready, he said, you can start with the first hand, worship hands, which is hold the TV. You just start like this, and then you can go big screen, just a little bit bigger. And then he said the next step is hold my baby. Or you can do it like Simba, Circle of Life, hold my baby. Either way, both of them are good. The next one is my fish was this big, just the worship hands. Or if you're a better fisherman, my fish was this big. It works either way. And then when you're ready to go up, goalposts, the classic. Maybe throw a heartburn in there. Double heartburn, right back to goalpost. So he talks about all these different worship hands that you can do. But it's funny because it talks about what's going on the outside during worship and not what is going on the inside. And as Christians, we can think about that routine and think it's funny. Obviously, it's funnier when he does it. I'm not a comedian. I tried, but he does it better. And we can think it's funny, but we need to think more about what it means to worship God and what it means to be a true worshiper. So I'm going to read from John today. John chapter 4, verses 21 through 26. And it says, "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." All right, so there is a lot in this passage that we can learn about worship. And I've been studying this chapter for a while, and I know that there are a few things that God wants to speak to us about worship. So my first point is that God desires true worshipers. It says right in verse 24, those who worship in spirit and truth, they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. And as Christians, we want to live for God and be the worshipers that God wants. And when Jesus was talking to the Samaritan woman in this passage, both of them kind of had a background of their people not getting along, Jews and Samaritans. They did not mesh well. And one of the disagreements that these two people groups had was that the Samaritans believed that believers must worship, the people of God must worship him at Mount Gerizim. And the Jews believed that they must worship in Jerusalem. So they both had the idea that where they worshiped mattered. That what they did on the outside needed to reflect like that they were doing the right kind of worship. And Jesus said that in this chapter that there was an era where they would neither worship on the mountain that the Samaritan woman was on or in Jerusalem. And that was because it was an era for them to worship in spirit and in truth. And as believers, we want to do that. That's how we apply this to our lives. But when I'm reading this, it can be unclear to tell what worshiping in spirit and in truth really means. So, so the next point is that true worshipers worship in the Spirit. And it also says that God is Spirit. So when we worship God in spirit, it means that we are experiencing the full presence of God, and we are not holding back. And our heart is in relationship and in the presence of Him. Jesus says that a new era is coming, and this era is the era of the Spirit. So He says that a new era is coming, and we are living in that era right now. And then it became obsolete whether you worshipped in Mount Gerizim or in Jerusalem. All that mattered was your personal relationship with God. What mattered was not what was going on the outside. Didn't matter what kind of worship hands you had, where you went to worship, but what mattered was the kind of worshiper you are, the kind that worships in the Spirit. You are connecting with the Spirit of God in the presence of God. And then my last point is that true worshipers worship in truth. So we know that God desires true worshipers, and they worship in the Spirit and in truth. When you worship in truth, that means when you think of defining truth, you think of, oh, that is correct, or that is right, or that's 100% good. That is truth. So, when you think about worshiping in truth, it means that you worship God with all that you have. It means you're not holding back, you're not hiding or pretending. You're giving God everything that He deserves. And you're not worried about what is on the outside. You are just giving God the worship that He deserves. And it can often be hard to define and apply something that we can't often really tell. Like, you can't see someone's heart. You can't see what's going on. And that's why a lot of people can often try to be showy with their worship or try to do things that they think they should do, but they're not really sure why they're doing it. So when you worship in spirit and truth, that means that your relationship with God and your heart is right with Him. And that is between you and God, not between you and people who are watching you or people that you're around. And so what I want you guys to remember is that God is seeking true worshipers. And so what matters most is that it is between you and God. It's not between what I say or what others think, but being a true worshiper is being a worshiper who is in spirit and truth, and that is just between you and God.